everyone. Before we get started, I wanted to quickly set the stage so you all have some context. Firstly, my name is Sean, and I'm a senior associate here at 500. My job is to largely work with a number of corporate innovators and investors on projects related to startup investment and startup partnerships. This event is being hosted as part of our ongoing Slack community, 500 VC, an invite-only group for corporate and institutional investors to engage in helpful conversation, networking, and ultimately empower founders. If you're interested in joining 500 VC, please feel free to shoot me an email, which I'll drop in the chat shortly. About this event in particular, CVC Insider, this is a bi-weekly speaker series featuring top corporate venturing practitioners sharing their unique journey into CVC, specific challenges, and best practices they've developed as a result. We will have Q&A on, so feel free to ask questions in the Q&A section, and we'll do our best to cover them. Now that you know who we are and what's going on, I'm going to hand it over to Nicolas to kick things off. Enjoy.
Thank you, Sean, and thank you 500 Startups for making this podcast happen. This is really meaningful for anyone looking at corporate venturing, whether they want to get into corporate venturing or want to learn from practitioners about best practices. Today is very special. We have Heriberto Diarte, who is driving the corporate venturing initiatives at Schneider Electric. And I can tell you that I've learned a lot from him and at times asked for tips from him. So I'm going to make sure I ask questions that I've asked to him before because they were really good golden nuggets that he shared with me. And I think they are really worth sharing for a wide audience. So without further ado, Eri, all yours.
Hi. Well, I was asked to introduce myself first, so I'll try not to bore you to death with that. The first thing you need to know is that I was born and raised in Mexico. So I'm Mexican, nobody's perfect. And I grew up there from a family of entrepreneurs. I started my first business when I was 17. And then when I went to study in the UK, I just closed the business. And people ask me, why didn't you sell it? You were making lots of money. And I scratched my head and said, I didn't think about it, selling the business. So that was my first bad experience with entrepreneurship. But, I was 17 years old. I was making a ton of money with this business. It was a little bit insane. And that paid actually for my years in England. Then I studied economics in Mexico. I worked in the family business for a number of years. And that was an interesting experience because the family business was a supermarket chain that went bankrupt because of conversions of Walmart coming to town and our debts in dollars going 3 times as much because of the devaluation of the peso. So that was very difficult 3 years of restructuring a company that my father had created from scratch. And we managed to save it, but we had to transform it completely. After that, I decided that I needed to further my education. And I went to Stanford Business School, where I took a lot of entrepreneurial classes and investment classes. And then I went to the Kennedy School of Government. I was doing a joint program between the Kennedy School and Stanford. And I got a master in public administration at the same time. I did this with a scholarship from a large Mexican cement company called Cemex, which is the second or third largest cement company in the world. And then the reason they gave me a scholarship is because they wanted to hire me when I graduated. So I couldn't fulfill my dream upon graduation of going directly into the investment space because I had a moral commitment to go back to Cemex, which I did. I stayed with Cemex 7 years in the M&A department. And that was a great experience because I was working like hell, but I was involved in deals worth $11 billion that we closed. And then I was in the post-merger integration team that took over the acquired companies. And in 9 months, we would increase the EBITDA by 10 percentage points. It was a tremendous money-making machine. Then I made a mistake. I got married. That's a joke, of course. I got married to a lovely English lady that had her dream job offered to her in INSEAD in Fontainebleau, France. So I decided to quit Cemex and to move to France to follow her and give her the chance to take this job. That was really a dream job for her. So I arrived in France without speaking French, without knowing anybody, just thinking, I'm a great guy. I'm going to land in Paris and get a great job. After 2.5 months, I was thinking, what the hell was I thinking? What arrogance to come here and think I'm going to just, get a great job and situation without knowing anybody. But I was very lucky and things worked out. And I went to a large company called Alstom, and I was in the transport division, making trains and metros, managing a P&L called Southeast Europe, 16 small European countries. Like Greece and Switzerland and Romania, Bulgaria, these sort of things. I was very lucky there. I did very well. It was a turnaround situation. So my Cemex experience of turning around operations helped a lot. And we became, after France, the second most profitable business unit in the company. At that point, they decided to promote me and they gave me all the Middle East and Africa as well. So my region expanded quite a bit. And we were again lucky to be able to grow the P&L from 400 million at the time to 1.5 billion between 2009 and 2012, which is significant because this is after the crisis. So we were able to gain a lot of market share and capture a lot of business. After that, my wife said, 7 years at INSEAD, I'm really happy to take a step back. Thank you for following me to Paris. Let's do something else now. So I said, great, where do we want to live? Maybe the south of France or the coast of Spain or the San Francisco Bay Area. We were trying to figure out how to make that work. But God has a sense of humor, and the best job offer that I got was to be the CEO of an automotive company, a Swiss one. But the board wanted me to move the headquarters to New Delhi, India, which was not on the list. It was not on the list of where to go. So we moved to New Delhi, India with all my family in 2012. It was a great experience. It's a very intense experience, but it was a great experience. And we lived there for 3 years. Something I neglected to say is that I continued to this time when I was working full-time with Alstom or with Cemex to start new businesses. So I've started a total of 7 businesses from scratch. 5 are still alive. 1 I sold, 1 is dead. And 4 of them are doing quite well. 1 is still in the chasm that we don't know what's going to happen. So in 2014, I decided to leave my job as a CEO of this company to start a high-tech company in the wearable space to solve a problem that I had as a father. I have 4 little girls, which are my pride and joy and the most important thing in my life. And I've lost them more times than I care to remember. So we developed a solution, a little kids watch that can link to through the mobile network and send you a ping to your Google Maps where the kid is at all times. So I was able to keep track of my little kids and not lose them again. So we launched this company. I moved to Silicon Valley, launched the company with some Israeli technology. And when the company started going well, my plan was always to go back to employment because I couldn't leave with the salaries that startups pay, to be honest with you, because my professional career had gone very well. And I was used to a certain level of living that I didn't want to lose. And having 4 small kids is a money pit, to be honest. So I did that. And then I went to private equity in early 2017. And in 2016, when I was looking for my next job, I started talking to Schneider, and they proposed me this starting their external innovation and corporate ventures. But they didn't give me a job offer. They said, would you be interested in doing this? And I said, yeah, that sounds very interesting. But they moved very slowly, and I got 2 other job offers. I had to take a decision. So I went to be the operations partner of a private equity firm based in London, managing their portfolio companies and so on. And then Schneider said, but is it okay if we still keep talking to you? And I said, yeah, sure. But I said, this is never going to happen. But 18 months after and 15 interviews after, they offered me the job to come and create the external innovation arm for them and the corporate venture arm. And that was a dream job. That was a dream job because it combines many things that I've been doing before. And the reason they took so long is because they wanted a very specific profile. They wanted somebody who has managed large companies and can understand a company like Schneider. So my experience with Cemex, with Alstom, with being a CEO of an automotive company gave them confidence that I understand large industrial companies. But second, they wanted somebody who has rolled up their sleeves and created businesses from scratch, who knows what it takes in real life to do it from scratch and then scale up a business. And then they wanted somebody with investment experience. So I happen to be the only guy who can tick the 3 boxes, right? And then they said, hey, you're Mexican, you bring diversity, so this is great. So they offered me the job in the summer of 2017. So I decided to quit my other job. That was a very difficult series of conversations. I stayed 5 months with my former company until they hired my successor and we gave transition. And then I joined exactly 3 years ago in November 2017 to create Schneider Electric Ventures. And I'm happy to talk to you more about that.
Very nice. Well, 3 years, happy birthday then.
Thank you.
So what I like very much about your journey, I mean, there's a lot to like, but what I like also is you have indeed this mix of corporate and entrepreneurship. And from big companies to starting from scratch many times. So my first question is, for those in the audience that are listening, how important is it to have that mix versus a pure corporate profile or a pure entrepreneurship profile?
That's a very interesting question. I think for corporate venturing, the more relevant profile is VC, that you've been doing it for many years, or entrepreneurship, because you really know, you can really put yourselves in the shoes of the entrepreneur, understand the journey that they have ahead, what tools they have to climb the mountain, what limitations they might have, and also understand when they are, exaggerating to be, I was going to use another word, but when they're exaggerating or not exaggerating, or you're able to put yourselves really in their shoes and understand and evaluate the situation really well. And also you're able to help them to act as a coach, which is what a good VC should do. So I think this experience is even more important than having been in a corporate. Now, corporate VC is very different from normal VC because there's a lot of corporate involvement and direction and people you have to deal with. So it's very useful in your team to have a combination of people who are pure VCs or entrepreneurs who have turned into VCs, and also people from the corporate itself who have all the connections and have deep domain expertise about the areas you're interested in, and can also go and look, who do we talk to help us evaluate this technology or help us do this? Who do we talk to who will be interesting to sponsor or support this company? I think you need a combination of both. But if I had to choose one thing, would be the entrepreneurial experience with a lot of patience to understand that corporations move very slowly. They have the not invented here syndrome. They move in at a very different pace.
Very nice. And I think we will talk about team composition, which, I mean, my question was unfair. It's like you can only choose one person, but at the end you can build a team. But I want to go back to something you implied, but you haven't said the word, but I think there's a lot of empathy you need towards the entrepreneurs. And also you mentioned about limitations, and the constraints that entrepreneurs are under are different than big corporates. Can you talk both about the need for empathy and the need for understanding these constraints that entrepreneurs are under, which are very different from a big corporate?
Absolutely. Even though I've started companies from scratch, my last corporate job was the CEO of a relatively large company with 7,700 employees. So basically, for a number of years, I did nothing with my own hands. My job was to meet with people. People would come and present to me. I would say yes or no, do it this way, do it the other way. And I was not actually working with my hands. And I had 2 assistants. so that we could have round the clock and 7 days a week. And so I had a lot of support. So when I started my last company, it was a terrible and humbling experience because you have to do everything yourself, your travel arrangements, your filing. Oh, we are selling in California. We need to register to sell in California. All these little things that in our corporation you take for granted because there's somebody in tax who said, oh, we're beginning to sell, let's file for a certain permit that we need, let's do all the accounting. Everything is done, you have a structure. And in the startup, you have nothing, you're creating everything. And the first you have to create is your product or your solution, and then you start selling, and then you figure the rest after that. Once you have sales, if you don't have sales, there's no point to put a structure into place. So the difference in what you need to do, and when you're in a startup, you have to be able to do everything, even things you have no experience, no desire to do. You have to be a jack of all trades and just get it done. And you have to be shameless, to ask for help and advice. And like, look, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to register this. Do you have a friend who's a lawyer who can help me for free to do this thing and to fill this form, this 14-page form that I have no idea how to tackle, right? And so you're an expert of none, and you cannot afford sometimes to pay a lawyer, $4,000 to file the thing when you feel you could do it yourself if you could just understand how it works. So the level of resources is very different. And the sense of urgency to make things happen is very different. That's one thing. And on the empathy is very important because a startup is people who jump off a cliff and they're building a plane where they're falling, and hopefully they will fly before they crash. So you really need to understand. And the two most important things that you look for in a startup is the total addressable market, how big is this opportunity, and the second is the team. And in the team, you need to understand, can this team build the plane? Or do I need to support them, or should we bring somebody to the table and really understand, do they work well together? Do they have the complementary skills to make it happen? And then to understand when the things that they don't even want to tell you. But if you really want to help them, you have to know those non-verbal cues and non-said things to be able to put your finger in the wound and say, look, we have a gap here. How do we address this gap? Because if you ignore it or they ignore it, the plane's not going to crash, right? It's not going to work. So empathy is very important.
Very nice. And we will talk about building the plan and how to help them build the plan later, which is also the value of a CVC. But before that, let's go back to starting the corporate venture. So you were number one, the guy who started it. How difficult was it to get started? It's like a startup. You have to get started somewhere. What was the most challenging way for you to start?
I was working like hell because, I was one, and all of a sudden, once you are there, they expect you, okay, we have a CVC, okay, they expect a lot of things to happen. So in the first year, I did 3 investments in funds and 6 direct investments all by myself. Employee number 1, no support, legal support from an external lawyer. But I did all these things by myself because there was a pent-up demand, there was a pipeline that they wanted to address. And I just basically was an execution machine. I didn't have a lot of time to do the proper due diligence and do the things. I just wanted to get things done if they smell okay. And that is the important thing about somebody with experience. You develop a judgment that with few data points, you say, okay, I feel that this is going the right way, even if, and that kind of allows you to short circuit a bit like the due diligence that you would normally have to do. So I did 6 investments in the first 12 months and three fund investments. And that started showing progress, and I started presenting the companies back to the top management of the company. They said, oh, there's progress, things are moving and really quickly. So that gave me some credibility that things are happening. But one of the most difficult things was to set this right from the beginning. When finally, my final interview was with the CEO of Schneider. And the first half of the interview, he was grilling me. And then at some point, he flipped and he said, okay, this is the right guy. And then he flipped and he started selling me Schneider and why this is a great job. And then at the very end, he said, okay, this was a great conversation. I'm just going to send an email. We should have you immediately in the company, and this is great. And I said, okay, so I'm the guy. You're confirmed? I said, yeah, okay. Now I have to tell you, I have conditions. If you want me to come, these are my conditions. We're going to have independence. We're going to have carry. I'm going to hire investors. We're going to do it the right way because otherwise it won't work. And his reaction is, wow, that makes a lot of sense. And thank you. That confirms you're the right guy because nobody talks to me like that. And that you're putting your conditions means you want to do this right. I say, yeah, if I'm coming here, I'm coming to have a great success, not to fail. And you know, most corporate ventures fail. And the average life of a corporate venture is 3.7 years. And then they get shut down. And if you understand the J curve, on 3.7 years, you're down there. You didn't show any results. So I'm not coming for that. So if we're going to do this, we're going to do this right. And he said, no, perfect. I'm with you. That was the promise of the campaign. Then when I'm in, they said, oh yeah, but independence, but of course you will have an oversight. And the CFO wanted to be in my investment committee. And I said to the CFO, the second most important person in the company, no, I don't want you there. Because everything, yeah, and those were not easy conversations. I thought, okay, I'm going to be here for 3 months and I'm going to leave. Because everything that makes you a great CFO, one of the best CFOs in the world, he's brilliant, will make you a lousy investor. Because you are used to managing the normal curve, okay, where average returns, extraordinary returns by a few people. The curve of venture is like that, it's asymptotic. You lose all your money most of the time, and a few companies give you all the return here. It's seeking alpha. Managing that curve and seeking that is completely different than managing the normal curve. And you are a brilliant CFO to manage risk, to manage the normal curve, but we can't have you in the investment committee. So I started the things that I thought were pre-agreed that we were going to do it. The DNA of the company was not for that. Then when I started trying to hire the team and they saw the salaries that good investors make, they said, but this is crazy. And I said, well, that's the market. And we did, we did surveys, 2 surveys to demonstrate, and the HR say, okay, the surveys are telling us what you told us, that this is what these good investors make, yeah. And so at the beginning, and I said, look, and I had some difficult conversations with very important people in the company, because I thought I better have the fight now and set it in the right way, because if I don't have the right setup, we're probably not going to fulfill our mission. And I didn't come here for that. I didn't come here to have a job. I came here to have a great success and to move. This is a job that I'm really excited about, because if I do it well, I'm going to help discover and nurture and propel companies that are going to move the world from a fossil fuel economy to an electrified economy, are going to do something good for the world. I am going to do something good for my company, because my company would partner with these startups in our areas of interest. We will maybe acquire some of them, and then I'm going to do good for me, because with the fund, my 500 million euro fund, we will have great returns, and I'm going to make money with that. So it's an alignment of interest. But for that to align, we need to have the proper setup and the proper tools, the proper people, the proper incentives, and so on. So those conversations at the very beginning were difficult, because even though they said yes at the beginning, the DNA of the company was to, oh, but this is out of the structure, it's out of the box. Say, yeah, exactly. I'm here to do things that are out of the box. That's what you need. That's why you hired me. So now trust me and give me the tools that I need to do that. And it worked, but it took a while.
And we will double click on this, but I think the way I see it is companies are very good at distribution curve law. And as they get better, they shift it towards the right, where it's actually more success, less risk. While investing in VC is more power law. Like you said, very few will return a lot, and a lot will fail or not return much. And when you think about a fund, you want to have the return on the total fund, which means you need these big successes. I want to double click on one thing you mentioned, which is when you started, you invested in 2 different funds. And I want to understand if that's a best practice you would recommend a new CVC to get started. Maybe it's about increasing deal flow or other reasons, but is there a reason that drove you to do not just an investment in one fund, but actually 2 funds on top of direct investments?
So I actually invested in 3 funds, and I'll tell you what the rationale was. The rationale was that we pulverize or increase the exposure to good startups. So in a normal fund, if we carry it, we're going to have 20 to 30 portfolio companies. And if we add, and we're going to spend, let's say, 500 million. But if I put 20 million here with a fund, 20 million here, with those 60 million, I will be able to see another 60 to 90 companies. And I made sure that we invested in funds where we were an important LP, giving them about 10% of the fund, that we were in the LPAC, that we had information, constant, at least quarterly information, and we sat together to review the pipeline, the companies, and so on, and that we had access to the startups. Because what Schneider wants is to have access to these startups in our areas of interest and partner with them, absorb their technology, white label their solution, take them to market, be the first ones who are able to use those new technologies or business models out there. So investing in funds would give us an ability to see more of those. And it was kind of an easy way to start and to already have a portfolio of portfolios, right? Where we had access to these companies. So that's the theory. How has it worked? So a couple of these funds have been really great. That now, 3 years later, 75% of their companies are relevant to us. Are companies that will say, yeah, I'm interested in that. I want to get to know this company. And with many of them, we have actual commercial agreements where we have a reseller agreement, we go together to markets and so on and so forth. So with a couple of those funds, things are working very well. And not only that, sometimes we share deal flow. Hey, look at this, and I go to them, I'm interested in this, but I have this issue. What do you think? It's like a second opinion from a doctor. So it's great to have that type of relation. So we do have that with a couple of those funds. Another one that I'm not going to mention didn't pan out that way because their area of interest didn't overlap so much with ours. So there's not a lot of companies in the portfolio we're excited about. And also, I think because of that, we don't have this close relationship of sharing deal flow or sometimes helping each other with our thesis and our deep dives that we do.
So it's very important to choose your fund very well. And would you say that the investment interest overlap is the most important thing or something else?
I think the investment interest overlap, that your set of things you're looking at and theirs overlap quite well, that is the most important one. But that is not sufficient. That's necessary, but not sufficient. Then you have to choose a fund that is going to be where you are an important LP and they're going to listen to you. They're going to give you access to their companies. You cannot be just a silent partner because then you don't get the strategic value from that. So that they're willing to and eager that they see the value that if your company, if your mothership, if your parent company engages with their startups, they will benefit, that they're excited about that. So that they're going to give you the access. And third, you need to choose a good fund, because if you choose a bad one that is investing in all in dogs or bad companies, then you're not going to benefit a lot from that. You need to choose a good manager.
The value would not be there. So clearly this is, I understand the goal of exposure and increased exposure, and this is nearly a multiplicator. I have a question from the audience, which I think fits with the rest of what could actually be a really good source of projects. So Kumi is asking that as employee number one of this CVC with no track record as a CVC, how did you manage to find co-investors? And clearly co-investors is a very important element of the ecosystem, but also of syndicates.
Okay, that's a good question. we led a bit more than 50% of the investments we made. And I think people were able to or willing to follow us, even if I was a new manager, because of the name of Schneider Electric and the domain expertise. Because we have, as a fund, a double bottom line. The first filter is this strategic for Schneider? Is this something that where we can be a customer or a reseller or something, this technology can be part of our offer? Maybe not even today, but in 2030, in 10 years. So we're willing to invest ahead of ourselves. But the first filter is strategic. And then the second one is, can I make money with this? Is this going to be a good investment? Because if I don't make money, I will see no carry, right? So it's a double bottom line. Now, because of the strategic nature and focus, Schneider Electric has 25,000 R&D engineers. And we can help a company at every stage of their development. Very early stage company, we've helped companies to tell them, look, what you're trying to build is an engineer's dream that even if you're able to build it, there's no business. Nobody's willing to pay for that. So do something else. Then when they're developing their solution, we can test it. We can help them develop a better solution. And then most importantly, when the solution is ready for market, we can buy it. We can be a beta customer, or we can be a channel to market. So I think based on the strength of what I was trying to build, and since the beginning, I had people who were dedicated to a partnership team that was dedicated to make the links between these portfolio companies and Schneider to look for win-wins. This was part of the setup because we're humbled to know that no good startup needs our money. Any good startup can fundraise from tons of fund in the Valley or wherever they are. But where we can really help the company is that we have the domain expertise. So when we're on the board, we can really guide the entrepreneur. And second, and most important, when they're ready for market, we can help them sell. And as you know, $1 million of extra sales is much more valuable than $1 million of investment, because then you have the multiplier effect. If you're worth 10 times, that $1 million of sales is worth 10 million, right?
Yeah.
And we're able to deliver that. So based on the domain expertise of Schneider, the fact that we had a partnership team and that we were serious about doing that, we were always able to get co-investors. I'll give you an example. We did a program with Greentown Labs, and we detected a very early stage company in the battery management system for lithium-ion batteries. It's just 7 guys in a lab at Greentown Labs, but with some really cool technology. And we said, okay, we must have this. And then we decided, we did the accounts with them, and they needed $10 million. Really, that's what they needed. So we said, okay, we'll give you 5, and we'll help you get the other 5. I called my friend Kevin Skiller from Energy Impact Capital, he's my friend from Stanford days, and said, Kevin, you have to take a look at this. And at the end, we said, okay, you give them 5, we give them 5, and we make that happen. So luckily, because of Stanford, I have the network. And because of Schneider, we have the credibility of the domain expertise, and it's working really well. And as I said, we lead more often than not. We always take a board seat. And we have by now dozens and dozens of great examples of how we have been able to help startups.
I really like the way you connected finding the right co-investors to building the plane, which is to help the startup be successful. And I nearly feel like this would be an attraction for a financial VC to want to work with some corporate VCs in the same syndicate. It's a validation of the technology, but it's also about helping them build the plane. Can you give your view about why a financial VC would want to work with corporate VCs? And maybe take the devil's advocate, in which cases it's dangerous to work with a corporate VC?
I think there's only 2 dangers to work with a corporate VC, but they are real. The first one is more of a signaling effect, that if you're trying to work with Siemens and GE and ABB and Schneider and Rockwell International, if you have one of these companies in your cap table and only one, the other potential customers might say, Schneider is already inside. Why should I buy from this company? Because Schneider is going to get my data, or is going to get some information and whatever. So that's one of the risks. And it's more of a PR risk than a real risk, because we're a minority investor. We sit on the board. We're not going to get the data. We're not going to do these sort of things. And second, we're a fund, and in this business, reputation is very important. When you are asking people to trust you with their money, your reputation and your behavior is incredibly important. So there is a firewall between Schneider Electric Ventures and Schneider Electric. People don't realize that, but we are a separate legal entity. We have full independence. We have our investment committee that is only us. And we have an advisory, not a supervisory, an advisory committee from Schneider that is forward-looking. So we have that independence. That is one of the risks. The second risk is that that is perceived is that, okay, if Schneider or Rockwell Ventures or whatever is inside the cap table, maybe they want to acquire the company in the future. And this is a real risk. And I'm not going to lie about it. Yes, this could be an outcome. But the thing is, this is not our decision. If that happens, if we're on the cap table, we're on the board, we're helping the company, we see the company growing and has a bright future, it's possible that Schneider will see that and will say, hey, this is really cool. I want to make an offer to acquire them. But making an offer is just giving an option to the entrepreneur and the rest of the board, whether they want to take this option or not. And normally in this kinds of discussions, the Schneider Ventures person will have to recluse themselves from those discussions. It's up to the entrepreneur and the other board members. So the way I see it is just an option. It's just an option for them, do they want it or not? And that's fine. So the only real risk is the perceived risk that if somebody's on the cap table, is a spy, this company. There's two ways to mitigate that. One is getting another corporate on the cap table. So if you have Schneider and Siemens, okay, clearly you're agnostic. You can deal with anybody. And the other one is education, to tell them they own 10% of the company. Yes, they're sitting on the board, they're helping us. They are reselling our solution. They're a customer, but those guys sitting at the board, they want us to help. They want to help us build the most valuable, the biggest business that we can, because these guys are motivated by carry, by building a big company. So it's a question of also of education. So you said that what are the downsides, and you said what are the pros, or I don't remember.
Yeah, what would be the reasons why a financial VC would want to have a corporate VC in the syndicate?
Because we can really add value. We can add real value. Every VC say, "Oh, I'm a value-added investor." Most of the time is BS. They do nothing. They don't add value. If CVC, corporate VC done well, you can really add a lot of value. One, because you have the domain expertise. Second, because you have the customers. Third, because you can be a customer. So I think the more good CVCs we have that have the independence, that can have their cake and eat it, which is they have the independence, they have the carry, they have the motivation to build great companies. But on the other hand, they have the lever to bring the resources of their parent company to bear, both on the technical side, but most important on the access to market. This is a game changer. If that combination is done well, you can create so much value for the companies. Let me give you just one example. Schneider Electric is the biggest company providing energy, electricity, and cooling solutions for data centers all around the world. There is a company in our portfolio called Isotope, based out of Cambridge, England, who developed a really innovative liquid cooling solution that is 40% more efficient. So if you cool something with air, that's something, but if you cool it with a liquid, it's much more efficient. Everybody knows that. But putting liquid on servers is kind of it sounds counterintuitive. So we invested in this company because we said, okay, very early, if it works, it's really a game changer, and we want our data centers to consume less energy because data centers are growing. This is an environmental problem. We want them to be more efficient. So we invested in the company. We helped them on the technical side. And then when the solution was ready, we tested it. We put it in our own data centers, and lo and behold, 6 months later, there's no leak, everything's working well. And then we said, okay, this is working. So now let's go to our customers. We went to one of the big customers together with this little company of 32 people out of Cambridge, England. And we said, Mr. Customer, I don't say the name, it's one of the big ones, like to say Amazon Web Services or one of those big ones, who would have never in their life listened to a little company from England saying, I'm going to cool your servers with liquid. They would say, you're not coming near my server. There's no way in hell. But we went together and we say, I'm Schneider Electric. I'm selling you cooling solutions. We've tried this. It works. Try it. And they did a pilot project and they loved it. And now they're making the big order. So this company would have never been able to do that without Schneider. And I don't care who you are, if you're Sequoia or Andreessen or whatever, you would have never been able to do that either. It's only us because we have the credibility to do that.
I think it's very, very convincing, and I've seen that happening, including in your portfolio company. So this is really the value of a CVC. I'm going to ask a question that comes from the audience, because you've made your point very strong about the importance of the CVC independence from mothership. And the question is, what were some of the arguments you used to convince your CEO and COO of having your units independence?
Okay, there were 3 arguments. First, I gave them an example. I said, hey, Nicolas, what would you tell me if I told you, you know, you're super smart, we trust you, you're super reliable, so we're giving you the 747 to fly us all from San Francisco to Hong Kong. We're going to give you the plane to fly us all. What would you tell me? And this was actually in a meeting, and people are looking at me like, where is he going with this? And then I said, well, I hope you would tell me, Harry, thank you very much for the trust, but I don't know how to fly a plane. That's not my thing. So many people think because you're smart and reliable and hardworking that you know something. Venture is very specialized. You are either an entrepreneur or an investor for many years to do it right. I don't care if you come from Goldman Sachs or McKinsey or you were your best top of the class at Princeton. If you haven't done it, you don't know. So it is important to have in your team these people who know what they're doing, and to be able to fend off all these pet projects from the R&D teams and the strategy teams that are going to put companies on the table that we know they're going to die or they're going to implode because they don't know. They might get enamored by the potential, but they don't know. So that was one argument. The second argument was, in venture, to make it big, you have to be right, but you have to be against common sense. Imagine a little matrix. You are right or wrong. If you're wrong, of course, everything's zero. But if you're right and you are together with common sense, everybody will see that opportunity and eventually it's going to get commoditized. So you have to be right, but you have to be disruptive or against common sense. Things that people say, this is never going to work. Yahoo has already covered and web crawler, you know, the search engine. Why this Google algorithm is going to make a difference? That was a big discussion in Sequoia. People didn't believe it. So you have to be right and you have to be counter the current. Companies are not thinking that way. They manage the normal curve. They are risk averse. If they see it, it's too late. And if it's really disruptive, they're going to hate it. They're going to say, no, I don't like this at all. This is crazy. This is never going to work. That's why you need the independence to seek alpha, to do those crazy bets that maybe you don't see it now. And it's already happened to us. This Titan AS company that I told you, when we invested, the company said, why did you do that? I mean, we're not in battery management systems. Just wait, you'll see. 2 years later, that we see that batteries are important for the energy transition, for having more solar, and you store it. And now they're saying, oh, that was very clever. You see? I need to be able to think ahead, things that it's not your job. Your job is to manage a business. That's very different. You're looking at the short term, I'm looking ahead. That was the second. And the third one was, I forgot what was it. Oh, that thing about the how do you manage the different curves and what skills you need are very different. So with those, they understand, okay, fine, you may need to be independent. Now, we still get a lot of pet projects coming from all levels of the company, and we need to fight against them. And we've swallowed some frogs. I had to swallow some frogs that I didn't want to invest, but somebody very important really wanted it, and they pushed, and we had to invest in some things that we were not convinced. But it happens. We normally defend that, and now we found the formula that when something that we are vomiting all over, we say, no, let's not invest, please don't make us invest in this, and they still want to do it. We say, okay, we're going to take it out of our accounts. It doesn't count for a carry, neither up nor down. We're doing it, we'll execute it because of you. So we've made some exceptions when we really have a strong aversion about a company, but the company, our LP, wants to do it for strategic reasons. We now kind of don't count it for a carry.
Okay, I think that's actually a smart way to have these management exceptions. So at least you keep your convictions. I like your number 2, which is to be right when most people are wrong. And we said we would touch about your team. So how do you make sure that in your team, if someone is really convinced, they can go ahead, even if you yourself doesn't believe in it? How do you make sure that happen?
We said that some of the best investments are going to be very controversial. So we know that. So we let people have their golden ticket and say, we're going to do this, even if all of the rest of you are against. And we say, okay, we hired you because you're good. You know what you're doing. We're going to trust you. We're going to trust you. We don't like the company, but we're going to trust you. Let's go and do it. But you have one ticket every 2-3 years, right? And if it flops, the next time it's going to be more difficult. That has happened already once. There was actually a principal there was a member of our team who really wanted something, and the rest we were not very sure. The company was about to implode, was about to run out of money. And they had been working at this for 5 years. They ran out of money. A lot of money had gone into the company. They were about to close the shop. And he really said, this is great. This is at the right time. They're almost there. It took longer than expected, more money, but they're almost there on the solution. They're only like 1 year away, 9 months away. I think it's worth saving, recapitalizing the company, and helping them. So I was a bit neutral. Other people in the team were like, there's no way. But this person was really pushing, and we said, okay, we're going to let you do it. This is your deal. You're going to be on the board. Show us. And lo and behold, it's going really well.
Oh, very nice. Okay, so it's a good story. I thought you were going to say it went completely zero, but no.
No. The company's reaching the inflection point. Their solution works. And the problem with us is that many of our things are not pure software. They sometimes are a combination of software and hardware that takes longer, is much more complex. So this is one of those, but the solution works. So they've proven, they have the first 2 customers. Customers are happy. They're big. That pipeline of order is looking really good now.
Yeah. So I like the way you have these golden tickets. I think some people call them silver bullets. So I have a question which comes from the audience, Raymond, which I think is really important because you mentioned sometimes you invest in companies that are 7 people and so on. And the question is, how challenging is it to have corporate mothership working with your portfolio companies? What are I can't read the rest of the question, but what are your recommendations on making sure that it does work? And maybe there's a timing element to that as well.
That's a very good point that you made. And it's a good question. This is really difficult. It's an art because the companies move at different speed. It's like trying to make an elephant dance with what is something that is really fast, like one of those hummingbirds,
Yeah.
A hummingbird and an elephant. They move at different rhythms. It's hard. I think some things that we've learned is that 3 lessons. Number 1, put something on the table once it's ready. Early in my career here, we put something on the table that we thought it was ready. It took us 3 months to convince the business unit to engage with the startup. And then when they engage and when they engage is, okay, they put 7 people to work on this, like, okay, 0 to 1, boom, let's engage, let's do it, let's put it inside our software and so on. And then it turns out that this solution had a lot of bugs, was not ready for industrial purposes. So the business unit leader comes and says, Harry, this is BS. Don't waste my time. Come to me when you have something that we can use. So I learned my lesson there, and now we're the first filter. Are they ready enough for prime time? And so we don't put them on the table until they are ready. We can tell them about, we can massage and socialize, this is coming, you're going to be interested in this. But we only really ask the business unit to engage when we feel that the company is ready to deliver, that the solution is good. That's the first thing. The second thing, and once you start achieving successes, you get an aura, or you get a credibility that what you're putting on the table is not stupid. So we had some failures at the beginning. Now we're getting more successes than failures. So now people listen to us a bit more. The second, you have to recognize that your company has a limited capability to absorb technology. So pick your battles. They can't. At some point, they told me, Harry, you're putting too many things on the table. I don't have the bandwidth to do this. So I said, okay, pick your battles on the things that can be more useful. And third, it is okay that you make an investment. If the company is not ready yet, or you're doing one of those disruptive investments that the company don't see the value now, fine, just wait, keep the investment, help the company, and tell the company, I'm going to help you when those guys can see the value, which is going to take 3 years. So just be patient. And put it at the right time where you can have an audience for them. And have frequent conversations so that you can tell them about your pipeline, why you're doing things. Sometimes they will question you, but that's fine. You're planting the seed. Sometimes it takes 3 meetings for them to say, oh, I get it now. I get what I can do with that now.
Okay. And I mean, like you say, it's an art, which to me means there is a lot of judgment calls to be made, which is based on experience and all of that. So I want to touch on the team composition, because a lot of these judgment calls comes from how you decide to organize your team, but also who you plan to recruit. Can you walk us through your first 3 recruits? How did you choose them, and how did you think about making sure that it was effective for your goals?
So first thing you have to know that Schneider Electric Ventures is quite a relatively large team, because we have 3 practices. We have the incubation practice. It's 8 people, young, fully dedicated to find new ideas, seed companies, partner with incubators and universities. They're looking at the very early stage, launching new companies. That's the incubation practice. Then is the investment practice. And then is the partnership practice. So the profile of each of those buckets is very different. The incubation people are people who are technology savvy, relatively young, super enthusiastic, good networkers. This is whether they're from Schneider or from outside. The partnership team is all people with gray hair who have been in the company for a long time, who are very well respected, who have managed lines of business or countries, who have had a P&L. They have a lot of gravitas, they can pick up the phone and say, that R&D project that you're working on, stop it, because we found the company that already is doing what you're doing. So let's just partner with this company instead of reinventing the wheel. Who have that credibility and connections to do that. And 7 people full-time all around the world, and they're all from Schneider for many, many years. So they have those connections and that gravitas. And then the investment team, it's all like me. I'm an ex-entrepreneur turned investor. And the other 3 are long-time investors with a lot of investment experience, a great track record. So we did it by design, that those 3 different practices require a different profile. And so we did it like that. And so in the investment team, they're all investors from outside the company who don't know Schneider very well, but we have a partnership team who guide us. And we tell them, oh, I need to evaluate this zinc ion technology for batteries. Who can inside the company is the expert on that? And then, we go and find them and so on and so forth.
I think there is something which is interesting. I think you mentioned you're investing for Schneider 2030. You're not investing for Schneider 2020. How important is it actually to have people in the investing team that are not from Schneider, so they don't have this filter of Schneider 2020, but they can dream about what Schneider 2030 should be?
It's a very good question, and it's very important and very useful. We find that people who know Schneider really well, they often tell us, oh no, that's not strategic because we're not doing it now. No, the fact that we're not doing it now doesn't mean that we couldn't be doing it in the future. That's exactly what we're here to do. And the question is more, are there any assets from Schneider that this little company could use to have a success? And if so, why couldn't we be in that business in the future? Let me give you an example, which is at the moment theoretical because I haven't found that. Schneider sells a lot of gear to a building. We have a building management system. We have an access control system. The card that you swipe to enter the building is Schneider. We have, of course, a lot of hardware, the circuit breakers, the panels, all the wiring devices, the switches and all that. And the cameras and cameras, we don't have that business, I think. We sold it, I'm not sure. The sensors, and then the building management system that detects that half of the 7th floor is empty and shuts the lights off, redirects the vents to save electricity. That's Schneider. But we don't have a fire and safety solution. We don't have that solution. That's Tyco. But we have the customers from buildings. So if I ever find a startup that has a killer application or technology for fire and safety, I'm going to invest in them. Has nothing to do with what Schneider is doing right now. Has nothing to do with electricity management or industrial management. But we can go to our same customer we already have, we already own, and say, now we can offer you a package solution. Buy everything from Schneider and we can be the one-stop shop. So that is the type of things that's one example of the type of things that we think about, that Schneider's will say, oh, we're not in the fire safety business. So I think it's good to have these people who get to know Schneider, all the assets of Schneider, and say, how can we leverage those assets to give our portfolio companies an unfair advantage? And maybe that can create a new business for us.
Would you say that building a new business for Schneider is the cherry on the cake, or it is a raison d'être for a CVC?
We have 3 objectives for Schneider. The first one is to bring innovation on the table, into the company. So how we do that is by partnering with startups. And now we have, as I said, dozens of examples where some software code developed by somebody else lives inside our bigger solution, right? And we are a customer and we're growing together. So we're fulfilling the reason why we exist by that. A second one would be if we create a new business or invest in a business that we end up acquiring, and this becomes a growth engine for the company. That's another one of our objectives that we want to do. Another one is to be good stewards of the money that Schneider is giving us, and create value with this, make money with our fund. And by the way, we have hurdle rate, right? Which if I'm not above a certain IRR, we get 0. So we're very motivated to make good investments. And the last one is, because we're looking outside, we need to tell Schneider and influence their strategy to say, guys, this is going in this direction. We're seeing things that are really interesting here. We don't have that business, but we see a lot of money, a lot of brain, a lot of technology coming into this area. And this area should be one of our markets. We should do something here. So we're also flagging to Schneider areas that they should look at and put up as part of their product portfolio roadmap, part of their R&D, part of their strategic intent, and so on and so forth. Those are the 4 objectives.
Very nice. And so we are at the top of the hour, so I want to finish with one question. If someone is today in a company and that person wants to start a CVC for that company, what advice, the number 1 advice you would give them?
So they're already inside the company and
Yes.
They have a chance to start their CVC.
Yes.
The first advice is to get buy-in from the very high level, from the CEO, the chief of strategy, whoever the chief innovation officer, if you have one, or the R&D head or the chief of technology officer at that level. You need to socialize with them to get their support. Second, fight to have the right setup from the beginning, to say, look, there are ways to do this right and ways to do this wrong. If we're going to do the typical CVC, we're investing off the balance sheet, we have to ask permission, we don't have independence, we don't have carry, you're not going to let me hire real investors to be part of the team and so on, we're going to lose. So if you want to do this right, let's do it. These are the things that we need. And I can tell you in another occasion what are the things. Is the independence, is the have a mix of internal and external people being investors or entrepreneurs, and then having carry and having the ability to pay good salaries to hire really top people. This business is a question of talent. 20% of the firms get 80% of the value, and 50% of the funds, including normal funds, they lose money. And I think the average CVC that loses money is even higher than 50%. So this is a thing where a business where it's hard and most people lose money and are a failure. So if you want to be a success, you need to have the right elements, the right setup, and the right team and tools to be able to do that. So you need the support from the CEO at the very beginning, and you need to get the right setup, because otherwise you're fighting a losing game.
Thank you, Eri. I think they are all amazing advices. I think the audience will be learning a lot and should follow your guidance. Thank you. Thank you very much, and for your time. Very generous.
It's a pleasure. Thank you. Bye-bye.
Bye-bye.